So everyone knows Hugh Jackman is Logan, Wolverine. That's his like iconic role. That was his breakthrough role. It was huge. Weird thing is, he almost wasn't. They'd actually cast this dude Doug Ray Scott, who played the bad guy in Mission Impossible 2. They were 3 weeks into filming X-Men when Hugh Jackman got cast. Doug Ray Scott was in a motorcycle accident while filming MI2, so they were like, I guess we'll call up Hugh Jackman. He's our backup plan. There were a bunch of other people who were actually considered for the role. Most notably, Mel Gibson apparently was such a contender to play Wolverine that in early concept art, it all looks like him. And you can kind of see where they're going with that. Like, he did crazy stuff in Lethal Weapon. He is, I mean, Wolverine is kind of a lethal weapon, just, you know, with claws rather than guns.
It's a great picture, too. You could just Photoshop claws onto his hand.
Yeah, right? He's even wearing, like, the Wolverine jacket, pretty much.
Yeah.
Also, Aaron Eckhart, which seems kind of odd. He played you know, Harvey Two-Face in Dark Knight, but he was just kind of bumming around. He was in Aaron Brockovich a few years later, which he played a nice biker with cool sideburns, which kind of makes sense, like what that character would be like. Can't really imagine him being like a proper, you know, badass tough guy like Wolverine.
It's actually like actively difficult to picture anybody other than Hugh Jackman at this point.
Yeah, no,
I'm
seriously.
starting to entertain the idea of it, but man.
There you go. Then of course there was Russell Crowe.
What?
Who would have also, I think, made a pretty good Wolverine.
Yes.
He's kind of this angry, scruffy man who's, weirdly enough, also Australian. I guess they were considering a lot of Australians for the role, even though Wolverine's Canadian. I don't know. And then there was, Viggo Mortensen. I've always said that Viggo Mortensen is typecast as an outdoorsman. You know, he's Aragorn. He's, what is it, Captain Fantastic. He's the dude in the road. He's just always this guy who's scruffy and out in the wild. You know, it's just kind of his thing. He's Hidalgo. He's that horseman who goes out in the wild. So that would have made sense, but you know, instead he went off and did Lord of the Rings or whatever. Jean Claude Van Damme. Not really a good choice, but apparently the higher-ups at Fox were considering that for a while. He would have done the action stuff fine, but it would be like, hey Bob, it's time to get nasty with these claws. I'm the Wolverine, the Weapon X. Really glad they didn't get him. Other side of the coin, Edward Norton.
I'm down with this.
Really good actor. I can't really picture him. He'd be like, hey Bob, it's time to open up those tin cans.
Hey,
this one's for you, Morph.
I mean, so...
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to compare him to the Hulk, that's a better idea. I don't know if he really fits either way.
He's really not a good choice at all, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, in American History X, he was kind of a badass, or just a bad ass, but yeah, not really an ideal choice. Famously, Glenn Danzig, lead singer of the Misfits, you know, weird, short, hairy, heavy metal man who actually models himself a bit after Wolverine. There's this wonderful old clip of him where he's on tour and he's just reading comics, and he's trying to look all badass, and he's like, and they're like, hey Glenn, what are you reading? He's like, it's called Wolverine. It's this comic about this guy who's got knives in his hands. It's awesome. He's always killing people. It's real violent. He's trying to make comics sound really cool. And apparently, he turned down the role. They did kind of approach him about it. And then later on in an interview, he said that he thought that Hugh Jackman played it too gay.
Well, what? Dodged the bullet there, didn't we?
Yeah. Anyway, going further on this, kind of interesting. Obviously, Patrick Stewart, another huge character, you know, playing Professor X. Patrick Stewart was a fan favorite from the get-go. Bryan Singer fought tooth and nail, no pun intended, to get him as that character. But two other contenders were Terrence Stamp and Christopher Lee. Terrence Stamp, I think, would have almost even been better than Patrick Stewart. He's just a fantastic actor. Christopher Lee, I feel like, would have just been too evil.
Yeah.
To me, my X-Men. The tower is rising in the east. Anyway, weirdly enough, not quite as weird as Michael Jackson, who apparently wanted the role.
As Professor X?
Michael Jackson wanted to play Professor X. On the subject of Jackson's, weird segue here, obviously Halle Berry played Storm. She was kind of like, I mean, she was a name at that point. Between X-Men 1 and 2, she won an Oscar for Monsters Ball, so they were like, we need to give her more lines in 2. That's important. She's an Oscar winner. They almost got Angela Bassett and Janet Jackson. Those were possibilities to play Storm.
Wait, we almost had 2 Jacksons in this movie?
Almost. We almost had Storm and Xavier being brother-sister. Almost in the very, very loosest definition of that word.
Wow, we could have had like Tito as Sabretooth.
Yeah, that would have been just awful. But yeah, Angela Bassett was apparently their front runner, but she was too expensive to get for the role, so they opted not to have her.
Wow.
Then of course they could have had Mariah Carey as Storm. That was apparently something that somebody actually considered. You pointed out the weird irony here.
Yeah, she actually can't go anywhere from her trailer to the set without somebody carrying an umbrella over her in case sun gets on the top of her head. Like, this is a
Yeah.
woman that threw a coffee because it was too hot once, and her voice is worth more than the entire establishment.
So, you know, for all the things they've gotten wrong in the X-Men movies, I'm really glad that Mariah Carey never played Storm.
Yes.
On that note, Anna Paquin obviously played Rogue. That was kind of a huge role for her. They considered pretty much everybody else: Sarah Michelle Gellar, Natalie Portman, Rachel Lee Cook, Kirsten Dunst. It's kind of funny that Kirsten Dunst and Natalie Portman both wound up in X-Men movies. Rachel Lee Cook was their, I think, was their #1 choice, but she wound up being too expensive or whatever. And then finally, Bishop was almost going to be in the script. David Hayter was talking about how he just wasn't really familiar with the character, but you will never guess who really wanted to play him.
Who?
I'll give you a hint.
Shaq!
Yeah, you can read 4 letters. Great job, Brian. But no, seriously, like I love going deep into weird behind-the-scenes stuff. You know, there's always that kind of famous like, who almost played Han Solo? Oh, well, everybody in Hollywood, basically.
Did they ever do Bishop?
They did Bishop briefly in Days of Future Past.
That's right.
We made fun of his costume last week on this show.
I don't watch this show.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, we saw Logan. I thought it was a really good time. I'm curious to see what they do with Wolverine because, let's face it, it's 2017. Superhero movies are the biggest thing on earth. Hugh Jackman might be taking off the claws or sheathing them or whatever the hell you call that. But yeah, they're probably going to recast Wolverine at some point, and you know, that's going to be tough for whoever that person is.
Yeah.
Let's hope it's Jean Claude Van Damme.